Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Bald and Bonkers Show. Join your hosts Christopher Mole and Dakota Franson as they take you on a wild ride through the world of the supernatural, with a humorous twist that'll have you laughing and shaking in your boots at the same time. From ghosts to aliens to cryptids, no topic is off limits on this show. And the best part? You don't have to be a believer to join in on the fun. So grab a drink, kick back, and tune in every weekend for new episodes. And if you want even more of the Bald and Bonkers experience, be sure to subscribe to our Patreon page for exclusive content you won't find anywhere else. Let's get weird. Oh, and for the whiners out there, viewer discretion is advised. There you go, you entitled pricks.
Oh, I didn't realize we weren't live already. Okay.
I know. It's like, that's why I was trying to give like a countdown just before we went on, just so it didn't cut you off. But ladies and gentlemen, we are here today with Dan Willis, who was part of the 2001 press conference involving Dr. Stephen Greer in trying to push forward disclosure. And obviously, if you know Elena Denon, she's been on our channel several times. She's helped me personally with a number of cases. You probably come across this gentleman. Welcome, Dan. Thank you for coming on. I highly expect tonight is going to be very interesting.
Yeah, honored to join your show, Dakota and Christopher. And hey, what you talking about, Willis?
I've been really looking forward to this. I've been really looking forward to this. It's a good job you come in a little bit earlier so as you could get to understand my accent.
Oh.
Yeah, see, if we're ever running late, there's one of two things going on, ladies and gentlemen. We're either having technical issues, which hasn't happened so much since we switched platforms, or it's the Scottish gift of gab.
Look, I can't help it. I'm Scottish. And that's just the Scottishness coming out in me, you know, and I know sometimes I speak really quick. I mean, look, the last time we had Elena Denon on, before the start of the show, she was crying. I was that funny, and that was epic, you know.
Yeah, it did seem like she was really needing it.
Yeah.
Got a lot of Scottish in me too, along with French and the rest of European mutt blood.
Yeah, there's a lot of Scottish in the United States, you know. There really is. So Dan, thank you so much for coming on. I've been really looking forward to this because I've actually looked up a lot about what you talk about. And before the start of the show, you were talking about crystals. I found that fascinating because crystals, oh my God, I've spent a lot of money on crystals. Could you tell us a little bit about your background and a little bit about your crystals?
Yes. You know, my journey started a long time ago. 1969, I had a top secret security clearance in naval communications, receiving official secret classified reports of Navy ships reporting flying discs coming out of the ocean, shooting off into space, thousands of miles per hour. You know, I going to chief of naval operations. Was aware the government was aware of these. Either we had alien bases on the bottom of our ocean, or we have technology that people aren't aware of. So, you know, it started my inquiry that, hey, there's something to this. You know, this is official communications. So over the decades, you know, I've been researching. You know, doing things like traveling to Area 51, the first time meeting with Bob Lazar in 1993 and recording it. And I became involved in this event behind me that was over 2 decades ago in May 9th, 2001, National Press Club, which Dr. Stephen Greer over here, what brought this about was a legal constitutional government has been denied access for decades, going back to the Eisenhower administration, which goes into a long history. And that's what brought about him collecting from 1993 when he met with a CIA director who was denied access, James Woolsey, witnesses, which he collected from 1993 to the year 2001, over 500 military intelligence witnesses. I was the 100th videotape witness. 21 of them out of the 500 were willing to testify under oath before a congressional hearing. Each one of us stated after we gave our testimony that we're willing to testify under oath. It's penalty of perjury, breaking national security oaths. We didn't have whistleblower protection back in 2001 like they do today. Myself being I was a broadcast engineer and ABC newsman, so the place was the largest event in the history of the National Press Club. 22 cameras in the back row. The place was packed with reporters. I was well aware of the other witnesses and what they were disclosing. Bases on the other side of the moon, 57 different species already categorized. What happened when we went to the moon? The astronauts are sworn to secrecy. They're airbrushing the UFOs out. President CIA directors being denied access. We had 0-point energy. We had faster than light craft developed back in the 1950s. Explosive testimonies, which the mainstream media, I started my education of how they control the perceptions of the public back in 2001. And I saw how all the networks, they essentially made it sound like we wanted to have simply a hearing, all these people willing to break national security oaths, testify under oath before a congressional hearing, just for the reality of UFOs, right? Totally omitting the element of illegal secret government operations. Since that time, I've been interviewed on mainstream media outlets, like CBS did an interview with me, and I told them, look, I'm not going to do this interview with you guys unless I can say on the air, and you guarantee me, I saw what CNN did, that we have the scientists within these unacknowledged special access programs that can prove we have 0-point energy. We don't need nuclear, oil, and coal for the last 70 years. They promised, the producer, she was almost in tears and said, I know I promised, but the higher executives made me cut that part out. And I found out who the higher executives are when a media company out of Hollywood wanted me to write this article about the control of media, being a witness and a newsman in the past, for the UFO ET issue. And I gladly accepted. The only way I could figure out how to wrap my head around this, I was aware of all the witness testimonies, is to plug it into a chronological timeline from the year 1900 to present day and start plugging in all these witness testimonies I was aware of over time and authenticated classified documents. And then when you start looking at all this information and seeing how it corroborates with each other, it starts to paint the bigger picture of what high probability of what the hidden picture is. You can't say you got the full picture because it's continually evolving, right? It's getting larger. But I became aware of how we've been infiltrated. We really didn't win the end of World War II. They heavily infiltrated. They took over control. They had a plan before the Nazis did. It's called Weltanschauungskrieg, the worldview warfare. They plan to infiltrate into our mainstream media, into our intelligence agencies, aerospace, pharmaceuticals, Hollywood, everything to create this matrix of perception that would control, indoctrinate over time. And it's much easier to talk about this now, but you talked about this stuff 20 years ago. And it keeps its own best secrecy because the truth sounds like the most bizarre science fiction movie ever. It inspired a hacker in the UK, Gary McKinnon, Scotsman.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yes.
Who found out about the truth about the secret solar warden program of the Navy. Yeah. And it inspired my friend Dr. Michael Salla, who was a teaching professor at a major university who, interestingly enough, he had his class as an experiment watch the full 2 hours of the National Press Club, and his students didn't believe it. They thought it was people were making up stuff. So it shows you the mentality, back in the year 2001. Today, people are starting to be a little bit more open because more things are getting exposed. Thank God, through alternative media, it's expanded much more. They don't have as big a grip, although they're trying desperately to censor and control the perceptions as much as possible. So here we are today, and that's a little bit about my background.
I mean, that's amazing. I mean, I see what you're saying about the censorship. I mean, I was born in the 80s. I was born in 1981. And in the early 90s, when you would watch like UFO programs or anything to do extraterrestrials, it was basically laughing stock. That's how the mainstream media was in those days. But now they are taking it a bit more serious, which is a good thing. But what I've found is, and this is quite interesting, that because I'm in the United Kingdom, I have to go and get all my stuff for the United States, because look, the BBC here and any other UK network will not show it. They don't talk about it.
Know that anything that gets green-lighted through BBC, New York Times, CNN, MSNBC, Washington Post, any of the what is it, the Telegraph over there in the UK, any of the mainstream media controlled outlets, of which there's many, there's an agenda. There's always an agenda behind it. They started, I've been researching for decades, and what I find is, and anybody that does, they'll hit one "oh my God" after another and realize that they did effectively infiltrate in, 1950 Operation Mockingbird with Alan Dulles, and then 1954, after President Eisenhower had a meeting with the Galactic Federation of Worlds in February that year, and just May after that, they started the Bilderberg meetings, which the Bilderbergs, along with the Council of Foreign Relations, control the 6 corporations that control everything you see and hear, and they consolidated it. The CIA started meetings in Sun Valley, Idaho, back in 1983 when there was 50 media corporations. And what they did was, from 1983, every year they meet with all the media heads, and today it's like all the social media, Facebook, Twitter, Google, all those people. And they consolidated it down to only 6 corporations, down to, I think it was like 2003 or so they did that. So the CIA has worked closely with these corporations. And so it's much easier to control 6 corporations than 50 companies, you can imagine. And so, billions of dollars go into think tank that engineer our perceptions and work to give our consent that moves toward an agenda that is not necessarily in the interest of the people of the planet.
Yeah. Dakota, would you like to? Because I know you've got...
The number of times I've been hearing spots I usually frequent here in Idaho come up when it comes to especially the latest disclosure files, it blows my mind. And there's a long list of people I want to scream, "I told you so" to right now.
Oh, yeah.
But Dan, one thing I've kind of noticed, and when it comes to, especially with everything getting released lately, I almost get the impression that a lot of those in control essentially just got lazy, and that's why so much is able to start leaking through these days. What are your thoughts on that?
They got, did you say lazy?
Yeah. They got overconfident and decided, you know what, they ain't gonna go anywhere.
Yeah. Nothing gets released unless it was planned. Everything is very very orchestrated. Like say in 2017, when the New York Times released the Nimitz incident, the Tic Tac. All of a sudden, all of the mainstream media, all of the outlets, even your grandmother knows about the Tic Tac. It's like it saturates all the media. But these Senate UAP hearings that they're having, like the one in 2021, which one of my witness friends, Mark McCandish, who revealed the alien reproduction vehicles back in an exhibit in 1988 that was faster than light craft. It was built back in the 1950s. As Dr. Greer in the recent 2023, just recently, he revealed that we have achieved anti-gravity by October 1954, which was 2 decades after Nazi Germany had developed anti-gravity back in 1934. Mike Tuber, U.S. Air Force intelligence specialist, came out publicly and revealed that the Tic Tac was actually U.S. technology. Then, 1 week before my dear friend Mark McCandish is suicided, they said he committed suicide. He was going to testify at the Senate UAP hearing. Mike Tuber comes out and says, "I made the whole thing up. There was nothing to it." It's like somebody came to his front door and said, "Look, you're going to retract that testimony about the Tic Tac being U.S. technology, or else." And so he came out and said, "It was just a psychological study. I just made the whole thing up." Very suspicious, right? 1 week later, Mark, who is going to reveal that we had this advanced technology back in the 50s, testifying at the UAP Senate hearing, commits suicide. But what do both of these testimonies reveal? They reveal that we have this technology. We've had it for a long time. And these intelligence specialists that are in charge of this whole thing at the UAP hearing, they completely go along with the narrative that, oh, we don't know what this is. This could be a threat. It could be China. This could be a concern. La la la. But thank God to one representative, Mr. Gallagher. He comes out and says, "Well, are you guys familiar with the Malmstrom Air Force Base incident?" One of our witnesses, Captain Robert Salas, was in charge of 10 nuclear-tipped ICBMs, and a red glowing UFO came overhead. The guards were up topside, freaking out with their weapons drawn, and the UFO shuts down all 10 nuclear-tipped ICBMs. Shuts them all down. And then he brought up the real hot potato. The real hot potato was the Admiral Wilson memo that got leaked. And I have a little story to tell on that if you want to hear.
Oh, yes, please. I'm enjoying this. This is brilliant.
Well, in 1993, I've been kind of researching off and on since 1969, trying to understand why the extraterrestrials just don't come down and say, "Hey, we're here," and why the government keeps saying, "Oh, we don't know what this is. This is strange stuff," So I've been trying to research and find out. So I heard that Robert Lazar was for the first time publicly going to speak to the public outside of Area 51, a little town called Rachel, just outside of the base. And so I traveled there, and about a dozen and a half researchers were hitting him nonstop with questions for 2 hours, and no recordings were allowed whatsoever. I happened to have my camcorder on my lap and sitting in the front row, and recorded the full 2 hours. And it's up on the webmatrix.net on the 1993 timeline, if you want to check it out. And his testimony has been consistent over the years. Now, what happened was the base freaked out, the Nellis Air Force Base, Area 51, and they issued a security advisory, NRO, National Reconnaissance Office security advisory, to avoid these people, or else there will be disciplinary actions, against you. And on this list of this document were unacknowledged special access programs like Cosmic Ops and Magi Ops that Robert Lazar was working on in S4, reverse engineering. And so somehow Dr. Stephen Greer was able to acquire that document, and he went to the Pentagon to meet with the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Vice Admiral Thomas Wilson. He brought with him Commander Will Miller and Dr. Edgar Mitchell, the astronaut. And he tried to look into these unacknowledged special access programs. And the admiral, in his high constitutional authority, was basically threatened to drop the matter immediately, or he would lose rank and see an early retirement. So he was mad as hell, and that's what brought about the 2001 National Press Club, because he said, if you can get your people together that could testify under oath, there's another story about that. You have my permission to go to the media with this. This group is quote unquote illegal. Now, what Dr. Greer was doing back in 1993, when I was meeting with Bob Lazar, he was meeting with the CIA director, James Woolsey. President Clinton had an interest in the UFO subject and tried to have the CIA director looked into it. And the CIA director is being denied access. And so, he exhausted his military and intelligence channels. And so he brought in Dr. Stephen Greer, who was the director for the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence, into a 3-hour meeting where he brought a huge stack of documents substantiating the reality. And the words out of the CIA director's mouth is, I know the subject's real. I'm trying to figure out why the hell I can't gain access to it. And so, becoming aware of the gravity of the situation, he met with some military advisors who advised him to start collecting witnesses, military, intelligence, and corporate witnesses. So from the year 1993 to the year 2001, he had collected over 500 military intelligence witnesses. I was the 100th videotaped witness and I was one of the 21 that were willing to go before the mainstream media. So that's what brought about the 2001 National Press Club event. Now, why did Admiral Wilson get denied access? Why did the CIA director, James Woolsey, get denied access? That's another story, which we can go into if you wish.
I find it fascinating how there's this secret organization out there that's higher up than the government, higher up than the United States government, higher up than the CIA. And I find it just, I'm blown away with how long these people have got away with so much. But their time's running out, I think. I think their time is running out.
Yeah, you found out that if you're not on it's called a bigot list. If you're not on the bigot list, it doesn't matter who you are, president, head of intelligence, you're not accessed into this. And now how this came about is that the Nazi SS developed a base in Antarctica, and they had an alliance with the Draco that gave them advanced technology. This violated the Prime Directive because they're not supposed to interfere with a evolving civilization. And so that's how Admiral Byrd was completely defeated in Operation High Jump. Mm-hmm. They defeated all their aircraft and everything. They sent down to destroy the Nazi base. So what happened was the original MJ-12 group that was headed by Admiral Roscoe Hillenkotter was trying to warn about the dangers of secrecy surrounding the UFO issue. He was correct. During Eisenhower, they set up a new executive order that created a new MJ-12 group, which put Alan Dulles, which was MJ-1, who was infamous for the whole Nazi infiltration, bringing in thousands of Nazi spies into the CIA, and Operation Paperclip, rewriting the paperwork, for the Nazis and so forth. What happened was in February 1954, when Eisenhower met with the Galactic Federation of Worlds, they wanted to give us, amazing things for our world, extend our life, help us with the spiritual development, but they didn't want to give us, the technology until we evolved to a certain point. They warned us about the Nibiru Greys that were in orbit around our planet, that not to trust them at all. And so Eisenhower signed an alliance with the Galactic Federation of Worlds. Now, Alan Dulles, MJ1, went behind Eisenhower's back, and they wanted technology. And the Nibiru Greys, they were willing to give some technology in exchange for their hybrid program of abducting people. And so they went ahead and circumvented Eisenhower and gave them underground bases like Dulce and so forth. And they reneged on their agreement that was supposed to only take so many people. They took millions of people. It was their way of infiltrating and taking over our planet, which the Prime Directive had to have an amendment to in order to address. But they're no longer a concern, as Commander Demethor of the Galactic Federation hacked the code and destroyed the Queen, which their hive mind all connects to, and so they're no longer a threat. And so what happened in 1955, basically Eisenhower had to sign a surrender agreement with the Draco and the Nibiru. And so what happened is ever since that time, even Eisenhower himself, he wanted to look in what was going on at Area 51 and S4, and they denied him access. They said, "Sir, you do not have jurisdiction." This was thanks to Rockefeller, who helped restructure the whole thing. Anyway, what happened was he said, "Well, I'm going to come in with the First Army, and I don't care what kind of secret program. We're going to come in and we're going to rip this thing apart, And so he wasn't kidding. So they allowed 2 CIA agents to give a report. One of them was in his deathbed. Richard Dolan interviewed him, told the whole story of how it happened. So ever since Eisenhower, every single president, CIA director, well, maybe George Bush Sr. got access, but they have not allowed access. And, even Jimmy Carter, who had a UFO experience, made his campaign promise to release the UFO files, but he was denied access by George Bush Sr. Our legal counsel, Daniel Sheehan, gave testimony of that. So that's been the situation since 1955, is that our government has been infiltrated. And Eisenhower in 1961, when he did his farewell address on television, he stated, only to take nothing for granted, that only an alert, knowledgeable citizenry could protect our future liberties and freedoms, and beware of the misplaced powers and unwarranted influences in the military-industrial complex, because the Nazis had infiltrated the military-industrial complex. And so we have the world today.
That's honestly something I want to ask Robert Kennedy Jr., who is someone we have actually discussed about coming on a show. One of his campaign promises is to release all the UFO files.
I saw that.
Yeah, that's something I personally want to ask him. Is like, dude, if anybody's going to know what happens to people that start digging too far, it's going to be you. Half the reason why we want you on the show, but what are you going to do when you're denied access? Because clearly there is a power struggle. I've seen bits and pieces of it myself. What is going to be your plan to make sure you and the American people are going to be safe throughout all of it?
Well, none of this is going to come out until the deep state is whatever title you want to give them. They're an organized structure that there's interconnections between, what were called Nazis, the Vatican, secret societies, the MJ-12 operations, which may have a new title nowadays, that oversee this whole thing. Technology is not going to get released. The Invention Secrecy Act, 1951, thousands, over 6,000 at least, inventions having to do with anti-gravity, free energy, medical breakthroughs have all been suppressed. I had 10 years experience with this and witnessed firsthand, suicides, murders, national security orders being issued, met with scientists all over the planet. And I basically gave up. They got too much of a control on the issue of, power generation. So until we can clean house, the good news is that, let's see, Great Britian had John Peterson of the Arlington Institute on his channel talking. He's part of the Arlington Institute, which is a U.S. Navy, Washington-based think tank. That he got 3 independent sources that, basically corroborate 100% with what Elena disclosed, and that is that the regressive extraterrestrials have been removed from our solar system back in 2021. So these ET overlords, the dark ones, of their minions, no longer have their higher echelon. Christopher, you were talking about the higher level. That was the higher level, which is no longer available to them, and so they're like kind of panicking, and they're getting exposed left and right. And so we're watching this theater play out. I believe that the plan that Thorhan gave to General Van Herk is this brilliant genius plan that is going to roll out, that the deep state's not going, they can't stop it.
See where once whoever they are that's left, the puppets that are left, that's controlling us all. See, once they are gone, how long do you think it'll take before a new age on this earth begins, a new technology age starts, where we can get rid of like fossil burning fuels, where we can start traveling among the stars alongside the other races?
Yeah, and Elena's seen the med beds inside the moon, which is not our moon. It's a hollow spaceship that's filled with these huge amount of med beds that are this holographic technology. That I actually worked with holographic technology back in the 1980s when I worked with Dr. Marcel Vogel on a camera device that was built in 1950s in England that could holographically project the energy of someone just using a drop of blood, and it could take a photograph and then move forwards and backwards in the time. And so this was patent, and thousands of photographs were taken. So, it was not something made up. And this is how Alex Collier describes what the Andromedas, interestingly, call a camera, where it holographically takes a photo of you and goes all the way back to your conception. And they can take out slides of time. And when everything was optimal, they can overlay that on you and age reverse you. And that's how they use the technology for the secret space program, for the 20 and back type of situations where they can, time and age regress a person back. But as far as your question goes about the timing on all this, when's this all going to happen? That's a question everybody asks. And you have to consider that this is in dynamic flux, and it's continually being updated and changed and everything like that. And so anybody that gives a date, I wouldn't trust because it is in a dynamic flux. But from what I understand, that we're going to start seeing more of their ships this year. So that's going to start the acclimation of the public to start asking questions and start coming into the realization after, decades of false indoctrination that you're not a lunatic into seeing flying saucers. And one thing leads to another. I would say more people are becoming educated on the world that they've been born into and the perception matrix that they have been indoctrinated into to believe. And like I always used to say back 20 years ago, it keeps its own best secrecy, because it just sounds so incredible that here we have the Nazis with reptilians, and you've got the Nordics. In order to have balance, the Galactic Federation of Worlds always works toward balance. And so they worked with the U.S. Navy, which developed the Solar Warden program, which launched back in the 1980s. Yeah. And these people start to have total recall after they take them and they serve 20 years in space, tour of duty, and then they age and time reverse them back to their point of enlistment and erase their memory as if nothing ever happened, right? And then they start living their life, and as 20 years goes by, they start to have total recall. And from 1980 to 2000s, 20 years, and the first secret space program witness that started to have memory recall was Michael Ralph, who worked with the Navy on Mars. And then you've had Tony Rodriguez on your show and others that have had this experience. That there's so many of them. My friend John Charles and others.
That's fascinating how they're actually doing that. So they're getting aged back again to their kind of younger self, and then their memories are getting totally white, and then they're going to live a normal life, and they're obviously starting to remember things that they did.
Yeah, they start to remember their service in space, and that must be I'm not a 20 and backer. But I don't. No, at least I don't. They did a good job on the memory wipe, if they did. Yeah, it's interesting. In communicating with Jen Hannah Redion, we were having a discussion, and he said, "You don't want another Atlantis. You were there." And I said, "I don't remember anything about my past life, in Atlantis." And he says, "You have the technology to be able to look at my past life?" And he says, "Yes, we do." And he said, "Well, you were a scientist taking care of a large crystal, and my specialty was holographic medicine," which is interesting because that's a huge interest of mine. My great-grandfather was the president of the Homeopathic Medical Society back in the 1920s when Rockefeller was trying to squash all of the natural medicine, homeopathy, and so forth. And so he was up against that. So I kind of have it in my DNA to feel this ambivalence toward the corrupt medical system that is doing evil things. And you have to think about 1946 is when they brought in all the Nazis into the CDC.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. Yeah, and the fluoride in the water system that was developed.
Oh yeah, to keep everybody stupid. Yeah. We don't want intelligent people asking a lot of questions and researching things. And just watch television and don't question.
I would say this is honestly mind-blowing to say the least. But to kind of draw back to Dr. Greer and some of his connections with Rockefeller, what are your thoughts on Dr. Greer's work in general? I've experimented a lot with CE5 and managed to develop my own frequencies, which some people in the audience have been part of those experiments and have had various results with it. A lot of people seem cautious because they don't know exactly what the frequencies Dr. Greer tried to promote in order to help establish contact are. So what are your thoughts on
frequencies, you said?
Yeah, like from the CE5 app.
Oh, you mean the CE5? Yeah. I've done maybe 5. Before 2001, I did a CE5 in Joshua Tree with Dr. Greer, and I asked him because I heard of a number of incidences where people had not the nicest experience with the reptilian. And I said, what about the reptilians? Because he always would say, all the extraterrestrials are benevolent. There are no, it's, bad ETs. It's all this, here on Earth. And he said, oh, the reptilians are sweet, so, I kind of went, yeah. And so my research, really started going in depth after 2001. And I noticed that Dr. Greer's, I'm familiar with some of those sounds and stuff on the CE5. They're, as far as I'm concerned, they're harmless. Not something I'm not aware of. I got exposed to them a number of times. That in the 2023 recent, when he had like 6 witnesses, I think, that some were talking about, anti-gravity crap, bringing down, human trafficking, drugs, and weapons exchanges, with these guys with no name tags or rank or, what service. These operations have been going on since, the Vatican gave all the Nazis passports and the rat lines. They started these drug operations, Zapata Oil Company with Bush Sr., who was working with the CIA with all this. And, when I was in Vietnam, a captain friend of mine saw the drugs being airlifted back and forth. So this whole drug operation, drugs, human trafficking, weapons sales, big money makers. And so they use these black methods of generating income. But back to Dr. Greer. That's the one thing I have. He had his life threatened not to go before the mainstream media in 2001. Courageously he did, and I commend him for all of the work that he's been doing and bringing awareness and stuff like that. The only thing I have an issue with is this narrative that there is no regressive extraterrestrials in our galaxy. There's evidence that shows otherwise. He believes that anyone who's had like a bad ET experience has actually had a screen memory implant, but not all of them. Maybe some. They do have that technology. I know he does these CE5s. If you were to have like something that comes down and wants to eat you, people, you probably wouldn't be able to have very many people show up. But I think there's something else beyond that. I find it interesting that the only other element I can find that says that all the extraterrestrials are benevolent and only life on Earth is an issue is the company in Rome, the religious institute with the letter V. So you just wonder, if they were to have, my purely speculation here on my part, but if you were to, if the inevitable contact with benevolent races and extraterrestrial was to come to Earth, the religious institutions would, a lot would get exposed,
yeah.
and they would want to maintain power and control, as they always have, as authenticated top secret MJ12 reports have revealed that the V company had wanted to have containment of the extraterrestrial issue. This is going back into the early 50s, working with the government to keep the public from becoming aware, and they were afraid that mass sightings would be revealed. So it's kind of a hard one to wrap my mind around, of trying to figure out, because if we were to have contact, I don't think they would be able to maintain their control status that they have.
Oh no.
So
No,
I'm not sure exactly why he's a very intelligent person, and I'm sure he's been exposed to other information, but to say that there are no regressive extraterrestrials, there's so much evidence that's contrary to that.
Yeah.
Of course,
Thank God we don't have to worry about it, because they're all gone since 2021. So I just want to say that.
Yeah. Don't worry, the probes ain't coming.
Oh, they're pissed. The Nebu's, the queen is dead. So we don't have to worry about the Nebus anymore. But the Dracos, it's interesting that Office of Naval Intelligence was working with Leslie Stevens, with Gene Roddenberry, to give the Star Trek script, which gave the prime directive, which Dr. Michael Salla found that it was almost the exact same that Thorhan gave. In other words, it was from the Galactic Federation of Worlds. All these concepts of warp drives and teleportation, all this stuff was to seed our consciousness about this, to be able to accept this type of these concepts in our future reality. And so it's it's like the badass Klingons are basically the Draco reptilians, and the Borg with the
I
queen.
find the Draco's very interesting.
Yeah, the queen, the Borg, they would simulate. That's what basically the Nebu Greys were. So they have these represented in the science fiction, but it's going to be interesting, because the reptilians are pissed, but we have not only the Galactic Federation of Worlds on our side, but we also have the Intergalactic Confederation, which has 500 motherships. Each one have thousands of ships inside of it, sitting behind Jupiter. And then we have the Anunnaki, the Enlil, one that was playing Yahweh in the Bible and stuff like that. The evil extraterrestrial is playing God. He's no more. Elena was actually at the trial. It was taken care of. He's out of the business. So Prince Ea, or Inky, is now able to give us our original DNA code, which is being enabled in the medbeds in the moon. And so we have the Anunnaki supporting us, the Intergalactic Confederation. We got the Galactic Federation of Worlds. And on top of it, Elena just met with the Nigumak, which are this really scary looking beings.
Oh, yeah.
That
I've met them before.
That's interesting. The deep state through Hollywood tried to make them as the bad aliens that, in Independence Day, that said, I want you to die,
Are they not highly sophisticated? Are they not? I'm sure I read something somewhere that they're highly sophisticated. Their technology is meant to be amazing.
One more time, Christopher. I'm sorry. I got the next amazing.
Right. I'll try and say this simply. The aliens that were shown in Independence Day I know that they're real. Are they not meant to be highly advanced, or one of the most advanced species in the galaxy? I've heard
Oh yeah,
stories about
they're
that.
highly advanced, and they're scary, but they're kind and they're intelligent, and they've been given the prime directive, and they like it. They like it. It's a good plan. It's a nice moral base. Thank God there's something like that out there, and they're considering joining, and they're the nemesis of the reptilians, of the Draco, and the Dracos are scared to death of them. So they joined. Already we have a we're what's the word? It's like an invincible force right now to protect Earth. So we're in good shape. They just have to clean house because they're not here, like Elena has said many times. They're not here to save us. They're here to assist us in saving ourselves. And so one of the first things is we have to do is to thank God for shows like yours and others that help awaken the public to this bizarre science fiction reality that's been hidden from all of us, that we need to understand it. But more people are waking up all the time. They see the deep state fumbling because they're panicking. It's like a desperate animal into a corner that is going to start making stupid moves and revealing itself more and more, because it has to operate in secrecy, because if people see what it is, because the media, they focus on creating division amongst us through race, spirituality, political, you name it, to keep us fighting amongst ourselves and opposed to ourselves, where we don't see the true enemy of the people, which is the infiltration of our information systems by the enemy.
Go.
It's very true. And honestly, with what's coming, people are not going to believe it. With what's coming, I honestly am dumbfounded, Chris.
I'm this is one of the amazing shows. This is what I love, is getting a really good guest like you, Dan, coming on. And I'm trying to speak really slow.
Oh, not a problem, mate.
Can you tell us a little bit about the crystals that you use? Because I found that fascinating. Can you tell us a little bit about your crystals and how you use crystals in your field?
Use crystals, were you saying?
Yes. Can you tell?
Crystals.
Can you tell us a little more? Yeah.
These things. Yeah.
That's it.
Well, you can change the outcome of the planetary timeline using a crystal in your consciousness. We're all each a fractal of source, so therefore we create. And if you can, I recommend you go to marcelvogel.org. I have a link to a company. I have zero financial interest in any of this stuff, but they have instructed their cutters to follow the specifications that Jen Hanaredian has given on how to cut the crystal in respect to the hexagonal core of the crystal, which opens up this wormhole singularity, you could say, within the crystal, that when you squeeze it, this piezoelectric effect allows it to open up this gateway through your consciousness and through breath into the planetary matrix. And so Elena and I did a show with 1,700 people live, and I did a positive visualization of the future. And what happened was when everyone pulsed their breath and used whatever they had, people, sometimes have, natural crystals like that. But if you have a Vogel type of crystal, you have this, as Jen Han calls it, it's like a surgical tool that works
Yes.
into time and space that allows it to modify the holographic matrix. And so we had everybody pulse, and they had somebody recorded a spike on the Schumann resonance we hit, because all of our brain waves are all connected to the planetary. They actually, Dr. Schumann, who discovered this Earth ionospheric cavity, if you plot it, it looks almost identical to a human brainwave, and that there's a reciprocal relationship between all the minds that are on the planet and the Earth's Schumann resonance. And so when you're operating in gamma, which is the higher frequency going up to 40 hertz, it causes a spike. And so it was minor, but we just did a show yesterday, Elena and I, and our first class on choosing a crystal. And so we directed, you can get these, we call them the Vogel-Redion cut, in honor of Marcel Vogel, who was a pioneer on it, but with the extra specifications that Jen Hanna-Redion has given on how to cut the crystal. And they're like under $150 you can get, which is very affordable compared to if you look at what the cost of a Vogel crystal is. It's quite expensive. So they almost, I think they sold out, but they're getting more in. But if everybody has one of these and they do this procedure, it might have quite an effect on the planetary timeline. So you wonder what you can do sitting at home, right? You have all the enemy has the power of the control of the media. They've got the military, and they have all these weapons and everything. But people can be at home with a crystal and change the planetary timeline with love. And if you use love, what it has is this transcending capability to go into the higher densities, and the higher densities form the lower densities, and so that's what creates reality. And it's one thing they've been very afraid of that we become aware of. In fact, in 1957, Professor Heinz Eisnick of University of London wrote a paper talking about hundreds of universities all taking out about the powers of human consciousness to affect reality, because they didn't want us to know about that. The Nazis are very much into the occult and understand the powers of consciousness and ways to and they're tied in deeply with the secret societies, which go back to the times of Akhenaten and the ancient mystery schools of Egypt.
Would anybody in the chat like to ask a couple questions?
Oh, I love questions. Yes.
Bring them on.
Questions.
Come on, guys, in the chat. Ask Dan some questions. Here's your opportunity.
Besides Chris's brother, who's clearly here to be
Christopher, by the way, I love your accent. So,
I know it's
reminds me of Scully on Star Trek.
I can't take no more, Captain. The reactor goes
the dilithium crystals are overloading. Yes.
Don't say Scotty. That's Elena's nickname for him.
Aye, Elena calls me Scotty. Oh God, Is that one there? Come on, guys. Does anybody in the chat want to ask a question? This is your opportunity. Type.
I'll over to YouTube. See if
I am a sucker for crystals, and I want to buy one of those now.
That's next on my shopping list.
I'm going to get 2.
I know it was.
I've never been on this Steam Labs platform before. It's working well, it seems.
Yes, we had to move from StreamYard because every time we did a live about maybe this subject, it just went haywire and it wouldn't let us speak.
Here's one. from
Oh.
Renee Moss. How
Oh,
do I
yeah,
get
it
a
has it on
Vogel Iridium crystal? Yeah.
Go to marcelvogel.org. It's a site I did in his honor, and on the index list, you'll see there's a link down there, and a company is dealing with the Vogel Iridium type of cut. They don't say Iridium, but they instruct their cutters to respect the hexagonal chord, which Genhan says is very important in order to be able to get the effect. And stay tuned to our classes with Elena and I. We're going to be doing a whole series on expanding upon the research work of Dr. Marcel Vogel and the knowledge that's thousands of years in advance of our understanding from Genhan Iridium. Yes, thank you.
I'm going to definitely check that out.
Definitely make
Is that
sure you get
another
it on the
question?
stream for the platforms that don't see the chat.
For some reason, the chat on my Streamlabs isn't working for some weird reason, Dakota. I don't know why.
Are you sure it's not
It's just
operator
blank.
error?
I know, no, it's just like froze.
Hmm.
It's froze for me. But I've got my what would you call it? My phone on. So, I think there's a question in the chat there.
Let's see. Gerard asks, was there a global shift in frequency early last week that might have affected sensitive?
No. They contacted the company in Russia that does that. One of their oscillators went off, and what you saw when the weird stuff on the Schumann resonance was like a parasitic oscillation that was going off. So no, it was a malfunction.
Yeah. So Dots ask, Dan, have you ever tried remote viewing?
Oh yeah. My wife Rebecca and I we did it a couple of times with Dr. Greer. We're very good at it. we beat everybody. Yeah. But I don't do it very often.
All right, let's see.
What else we got?
Let's see. Here's one. Leba asks, do you believe that spheres are a great shape for quartz crystals?
Well, the sphere is multi-resonant to everything. The sphere represents all the harmonics of all the geometries in the universe, and therefore that's why they use crystal balls for scrying, where the energy is all focused into the center, because there's one point in a sphere which is in the center where all the external surfaces focus into. And so a sphere is a good shape. It all depends on the function that you wish to do with a crystal, but a sphere is a good shape.
There's another one there, Dakota. A Helena B, I think.
Haley, this is not a dumb question. I'm just going to say that right now. She was worried about sounding dumb, but Dan, is there a certain meditation you know of that is effective for altering the frequency / timelines of the planet if one doesn't have a Vogel crystal?
Well, this is a very good question, because it's important to, and Genhan continually confirms this in our exchanges, that it's the crystal is a tool. And it's us that does it. Our consciousness does it. So the quartz and water are both interdimensional bridges. So if you don't have a quartz crystal, you take a glass of water, visualize the most benevolent timeline, see it as it already is, visualize it into the water, pulse it with your breath, and then drink the water. It's one way to do it if you don't have a crystal, or just visualize, or just see that timeline. Remember, they need to use fear in order to keep us from. And what the fear does is it feeds the reality that we don't want. And so when you realize that you're a creative being and you can direct the forces of of creativity into the direction you wish by seeing that reality. It's a great power they don't wish you to know.
Any more questions, Dakota?
I was trying to see. We had one that was asking about your accent, but I already answered.
Yeah, I just messaged her on the back. I messaged her. Yeah. It's quite difficult for me because I try and speak clearly, but when I get excited about something, I just spurt it out. And Dakota, it's taken him a year. He can understand me when I speak really, really quickly, but I have to remember that other people can't understand me.
Oh, can't understand why.
How do you know them? I'll just kid on him, Scott, if he starts.
Everybody loves the accent, but can't understand a damn thing that comes out of his mouth.
I know.
Yeah, no, you're doing great, Christopher. Just don't do a high speed run, or else you'll lose us.
We have sound effects with Streamlabs now, so if he starts going too fast, I can hit him with an air horn.
You can. There's actually another. There's a Dan. Can you see that one there?
Yeah, give me some more questions. Yeah. More questions.
Come on, people.
Talk about the amendment to the Prime Directive. Yes, basically, the Nebu Greys were, they couldn't violate the Prime Directive directly, and so what they were doing was abducting women and impregnating them and taking the babies and doing for these underground hybrid programs, which they plan to take over our planet through hybrids and through the emotional bond of the mother and the. Anyway, it's a big complicated thing, but that's no longer a concern. But the amendment was made so that they can't do that sneaky little workaround anymore. I could read the exact. If you go to elenadenan.org and click on the Prime Directive, you can see. I think it's the. Anyway, you'll see it's on the list, and it talks about how they this new amendment that won't allow those sneaky little bastards to try to do that again.
Definitely check it out, guys. I'm going to click on that now and save that, actually.
But they're no longer a concern, so all's good.
Do you not think that they might try and come back one day?
Oh, well, no. The Galactic Federation of Worlds, they're overseeing them, because once the Hive Queen in Orion was because they were able to hack Commander Denethor was able. If they were in stasis, and if they became awake and aware, the Queen would terminate them immediately. But they were able to keep them in stasis and figure out the code. It's incredible. He saved the galaxy, Commander Denethor, and sent a virus back to the Queen and destroyed the Queen. So now all these Greys, which was a huge, the Nebu Empire was massive. All these Greys all operated from this Hive Queen. And now the Queen's no more, so they have to go back to their own planetary matrix. And so the Galactic Federation of Worlds is overseeing all these Greys and making sure they all behave and and move in a good direction. So it's all being taken care of and overseen. So I have to worry about them. The only threat, if you can call it that, which is no longer really, is the Sakaar Empire, which has a massive empire across the galaxy that they, have come in and enslaved planets and done what they've done to our planet. But we have some very, very good help here today.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the day that I see them land and show themselves, so we can actually meet them.
Yeah, they'll probably have the attractive, sexy, good-looking guys and girls come first, and then they'll probably the more different-looking ones ease it on, so that we can acclimate to all the variety. I mean, you can imagine. We've only got a little bit of variety on this planet that. it looks different, our Chinese, black people, Indian people, Asian people,
That's
whatever.
that's something that I've always wondered, how like the Federation look at us, because on this planet we don't like other races. Terrible. We're always fighting with different races. I mean, what's going to happen when they show up and there's purple ones and blue ones and green ones and
Yeah,
it's going
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. There's see, they have this perspective that we're all from source. We're all a fractal of source. So we're all equal, no matter what we look like. If we've got 12 eyes and antenna coming out of us or whatever we look like. There isn't racism, in the Galactic Federation of Worlds. Everybody is considered an equal, and Earth will. The media is the culprit of they like to feed this division, and it really isn't. I don't have any issue with black people or Asian people or any other race. They're all. I have a issue with people who are a-holes, but that comes in all colors and shapes and sizes.
Yeah.
Oh my god. I would just like to say this has been one of our most bestest shows I think we've ever done. And I would like to thank
Easily.
you so much, Dan, for coming on this show. And I would also like to thank the new subscribers for subscribing tonight, and the new people in the chat. Thank you so much. Dakota?
I do want to thank you for coming on, Dan. This has definitely been quite an eye-opener for so much that's honestly going on. And like you said, I honestly can't wait till they show up. They're probably going to send down the sexy ones, but unfortunately, in my case, I got to. Unfortunately, as quite a few people in the chat know enough about my story, I got to figure out how to explain to my family why the aliens on the spaceships coming down look an awful lot like me.
Yeah, you have quite an interesting background. Been watching some of your interviews in the past, not very much, but just a little bit to get a flavor of who you are and who am I going to be talking to today. And it's an honor being on your show, and that I only do these shows, and I'm not. This is the last show I'm going to do, other than working with Elena on the crystal classes for some time. I only do it just because it's like preaching to the choir, as they say, when you do shows like this, because people who are open-minded who are researching already, something triggered them to start to inquire, to try to understand what's going on in the world. And they look at the alternative media to try to get more insights. And it's my only interest is to help, seed that little inquiry, so that once you start, that the crack in the dam starts to crack and get bigger and bigger until it comes to a flood, and you're saying, oh my god, it's like this is all real, and it's been going on for a long time. And the more of us become awake, the more of us will become awake. It works that way. And the the fractal collective mind that we're all a part of. And so that's why I do these shows. And thank you both for your service and bringing this information out to the public. And we'll do it again sometime, possibly.
Thank you very much, Dan.
And we'll say this: I do look forward to meeting you at JISC in October.
Oh, you're going? Excellent.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just bought my tickets, so I'm excited.
Yeah, I got to get my tickets too. I'm running behind. So, and I'm going to be bringing 2 teams of scientists with me that'll demonstrate the frill generator in front of the God, it was like 1,000 people last time. It's probably going to be even more this time. So it's going to be pretty incredible.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested to see what happens, because Elena's validated that, yes, I have worked with Thorhan in the past, but I also know that a couple of the kids that Thorhan and I rescued during the abduction rescues are also going to be in attendance. So I'm going to be interested to see what happens with that.
Well, I hear some of the members of the Galactic Federation of Worlds are actually in the audience, and so it should be interesting.
Cool.
Definitely will.
Right. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight, and hopefully you can understand me. Slowly, I'm the new.
You're doing great, Christopher.
AI's starting to catch up with you, Chris, so people will be all right.
It's fine. It's fine. AI will probably melt down.
Yep.
Catch you later, everybody.
Much love, y'all.
So much.
See you next time.
Thanks for tuning into the Bald and Bonkers Show. If you enjoyed the show and want to show your support, head over to our website at baldandbonkers.net. There, you'll find our merch, services, and more. Thanks for being part of the Bald and Bonkers family, and we'll see you on the next episode. And remember, always keep an open mind and an open heart. You never know what may happen tomorrow.
Go on.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Bald and Bonkers Show. Join your hosts Christopher Mole and Dakota Franson as they take you on a wild ride through the world of the supernatural, with a humorous twist that'll have you laughing and shaking in your boots at the same time. From ghosts to aliens to cryptids, no topic is off limits on this show. And the best part? You don't have to be a believer to join in on the fun. So grab a drink, kick back, and tune in every weekend for new episodes. And if you want even more of the Bald and Bonkers experience, be sure to subscribe to our Patreon page for exclusive content you won't find anywhere else. Let's get weird. Oh, and for the whiners out there, viewer discretion is advised. There you go, you entitled pricks.
Every time. It gets me every time. I didn't think you were going to keep that for the new software.
Oh, well, I didn't have time to come up with a new intro, so figure why not.
Honestly. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show tonight. We are joined by the man himself, Neil Storey.
Hello, good evening.
I
really don't know whether I should be here because I'm not bald. I'm trying. There's a solar panel at the back of my head, but I'm not bald yet, and I'm working on being bonkers. So I just hope I'll be admitted.
Well, consider yourself lucky at your age. You still have hair. I'm not even 30, and I already gone bald.
Hey, it's distinguished. I'm liking it. But Dakota, you've got no eyebrows, and Chris has got quite big eyebrows. So what's going on here?
I have eyebrows. They're just very blonde.
I
should have them glued like that. Doing them.
Whoa, that's grey alien, Chris. I'm liking it. Should we all do that? Oh, look at that. Oh. I'm liking
it. That's a little suspicious there, Chris.
If you ever wanted to look like a grey alien, actually, or wondered what you look like bald, if you're a guy, look in the back, or maybe it works for girls too. Look on the back of a tablespoon that's really shiny. And you'll either look like a grey alien or Pete Townsend from The Who.
Oh my God!
Try it.
This is great.
Live the dream.
You know, I love it.
When you've done that, you tell your friend to look in the spoon and say, "Do you think you look like Pete Townsend?" And when they're looking, you give them a good old tock on the forehead with it. That's winning.
Oh my God!
That's parental discretion. I mean, I'm not telling people to do that because that could cause injuries. I mean, I'm saying don't do that, kids. But you know, I've done it. I've got away with it. But the world was a different place.
I'm going to try that.
Right.
I'm going to try that to my friend.
Yeah, I have not advised that. I'm like a safety film that says, "Don't do that." Yeah. A bit like the safety film that says, if you are a serious ghost hunter, don't wear white trousers. Yeah. Because that just leads to a very disappointing, a sad night.
Hey, what do you think, Neil? What do you think, Neil? I got them into production for the old Ghost Squad channel. Do you like them? What do you think?
Oh, that's
White
great.
hats. I think that counts. You actually get it on, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll get you one.
That's great.
You know?
Yeah.
But
I'm not going to make any comment about that, but yeah.
You know,
I'll say it's positive comment. I just don't suit visor hats. I just people stop me and give me money or want to buy me a drink when I'm buying a hat.
What's your
like that?
What's your
I'm
favorite
not talking
type
a
of
proper
hat?
drink either, like a coffee or something. I look like I'm some sort of dispossessed person in a visor hat. I don't know why.
What kind of hat do you wear, Neil? What do you
Me?
wear?
I like a trilby. I've got a variety of nice big and small Peaky Blinder caps.
I've got one.
I've got a bowler hat.
Meldrew hats, that's what I call them.
I've got a new bowler hat for my Victorian events. Top hats. I've got top hats.
Oh yeah.
So
they're
I quite like my hats. You know, a beret occasionally.
So Neil, could you tell us a little bit
I'm very
about...
proud to wear a tam o'shanter as well, Dougie. Hey, I've got a tam with a big fancy pom-pom on the side, which just waits for somebody to take the rip. Yeah.
You know, there's got to be like Americans watch this and they'll be like, what are they two talking about? Tam o'shanter hats.
Well, they'll know what a wee tam is.
We need to get Dakota one
that
to cover his ball.
TOS.
Yeah. So, Neil, I've been really Dakota doesn't come out to say. I've been really looking forward to this because obviously you've got your new book coming out next year. Whenabouts is it coming out next year?
Well, there's no fixed date. I think it's going to be around about September, and it's going to be. I mean, there have been books on similar lines over the years, but not for a few years, and it's going to look at a kind of social history, really, of UFOs in Great Britain. And I know that there's been a detailed series produced, or they describe that as a social history of UFOs. Well, it is, but I want to produce one easy volume that if you're just starting into the subject, like we used to have when we all had to start somewhere. And I hope that in teenage years, I want to encourage that. So it's not to put anybody's book down. It's not to copy anybody's book. It's to simply say, look, here's a book on a history of UFOs, one volume, one price, and it just gives you that taster that hopefully will lead people to want to know more about, yes, Rendlesham will be in there, but other sightings, abductions, and we'll chart the history of UFOs in the UK. I mean, you can find them. I think there's evidence of strange things in the sky going back hundreds of years.
Oh, yeah.
You know? But I'm really going to take it from the early years of the 20th century, more or less up to the present day.
I can't wait till it comes out. I'm looking forward to it.
It'll definitely be interesting, especially with everything going on in the world right now.
Yeah.
Well,
so that's actually a good question. What's your opinion on that, Neil?
What's
going on right now?
What's been going on has actually made me a very, very happy man. When I saw what had happened with the Pentagon release, what they call the Tic Tac. Now, the Tic Tac, I've seen one. This happened in the 1990s. And I was there with a former partner up on Norfolk, where I live in Norfolk in England, is very flat. Not completely flat, but it's flat, very flat. But we're on some high ground, not far from a place called Haysborough, where there's a beautiful white and red lighthouse. We're about 4 or 5 miles from Haysborough. So we can kind of see that in the distance. And we can see the landscape around it. Really lovely summer's evening, sun going down, having a couple of burgers, looking out across the landscape. Come on, it's great fun, yeah? Sort of leaning on the old bonnet of the car, you know, the sort of thing. And from behind where we were sitting, looking out across the view, something out of the corner of the eye whoosh. It was white. It was traveling at speed, and it in the evening light, when it's that sort of evening gloom that you get, that kind of, the light was powerful enough to light up the top of the car, the roof of the car. We watched it whoosh, going right over, woof, and it went over to where I should think about a mile away. There were a line, still are, a line of fir trees, and this white light that was not a sphere. It's not quite like a tic-tac. They're kind of a sphere elongated, but not quite long enough to be a true tic-tac shape. And this thing went from side to side above this row of trees. And I thought, what on earth is that? I mean, we both, there's two of us looking at it. There's no one around, because sometimes there's dog walkers and whatnot around the area. No one around, really. What on earth is that? And I said, do you know, if there's an aircraft, I think they were Jaguars at the time, that were based at RAF Coltishall. I said, if one of them comes flying over, they're going to be intercepting that. Because, and I'd hardly said that whoosh, and I'm no expert on aircraft. One of the fighter aircraft from the local airbase came screaming over the top, and it went towards the tic-tac shape. The tic-tac shape kept moving from side to side, and then the aircraft moved to the side, to the opposite direction. The tic-tac went up that way, and 90 degrees, and whoosh, off it went at an incredible speed. And I know that I wasn't the only person to see this, because we thought, are we going crazy? Is it some sort of marker, maybe some sort of drone that the aircraft was using to zone in on, to attack? We thought, what on earth is it? And it turned out that other people in the city of Norwich had seen these lights later at night. Now, Norwich is about 15 miles from where we were in North Walsham. And people were seeing, they were filmed. In those days, it was a video. So, so it wasn't sort of the idea of everybody thinks you just put a camera up and film. In those days, that was a fantasy. If you wanted to film something, you had to see it long enough to be able to load up a video cassette and put the darn thing up. But there was footage of it going over the city of Norwich. And the official answer at that time was that it was there's a place called Lincolnshire, for those who aren't based in England at the minute. Norfolk sticks out on the side of Britain, on the right-hand side, and as you'll see, it kind of sticks out like a big bump, and then it goes into the Wash, and up from the Wash is Lincolnshire. And they said that this structure, which is a tall church tower called Boston Stump, that the light, some sort of light had reflected off that, and that's what was being caught on camera, and people are seeing. It was an insult to people's intelligence. You can look it up, you'll see the mention of it. But now they've had the disclosure that's come out from the MOD files in recent years. It's cleared that up, that that was the story that was put out there to just answer this unexplained sight in the sky.
That's very interesting. I think I've heard about that case. I think I've heard about that case. I've got a book there, and it's all like sightings all over the UK.
Yeah,
and I think I've heard about that. I mean, how could they say it was a reflection and people seen it flying through the?
I know, and it's a very similar time period. Now, I always forget which one saw it, but Philip or Ronald Kinsella, maybe even both of them, saw something very similar in a similar time period over Great Britain. Philip and Ronnie have done incredible work researching the sort of hidden files and the hidden stories of UFOs in the UK. I normally respect those two gentlemen, and I'm very grateful that people that have had an awful lot more years. I'm a historian. I do history. That's what I do. And I've got a great interest in the paranormal. Always have. I will admit, I've always had an interest in UFOs, but I'm fairly new to it. But what I come with is a kind of historian's eye to tell this story based on the authentic reports over the years.
Yes.
You know, I haven't got an agenda. I want to just chart these stories in the words of, in the way I would approach a military history, or ghostly history. Is that I want to quote the people who were there. That's what I want to try and do.
Oh, there he's back again. I thought you'd been abducted there by aliens there. I thought you were getting beamed up.
No, nothing that exciting yet.
I'll tell you what is very odd in the area where I grew up. When I was growing up as a lad in North Norfolk, there is and was a tragedy. And as a kid, you kind of grew up with this story of a young girl who went to ride from her home, just, 10-minute, 15-minute ride on a bicycle to go and see her married sister. This girl was in her early teens. Her name was April Fab. And she was going to see her sister in the next village, and she disappeared.
Yes, I've heard about
I remember you bringing that one up last time we
You
had
know,
you on.
and that, I mean, I fear after all these years, we fear the worst. But with so many people disappearing every year, I think it's worth considering. Where are these folks going?
See, it's quite interesting you say that, Neil. It was actually, what was it, last week we did the show on the UFOs, Dakota. I actually brought up, it was a strange report. For a couple of, I think it was about 2013 or something. There was mountaineers up in a mountain.
Yeah,
And I think it was near the Himalayas or something like that. It was Austria. Austria. And the helicopters can't get to this because it's too high, right? And they were right at the very top of the peak and they came across a body, which is not unusual because there's a lot of people die when they're doing mountaineering, except this guy was in a full business suit with his leather shoes.
You're absolutely right. And this is very similar to an instance that occurred, you can hear similar in the 1970s. In the 1980s, there was a case in Todmorden where there was a police officer out on, regular patrols in an area. He gets called to a coal yard where he'd passed. He would have spotted something very unusual on there. And this elderly man is a former miner. I believe his name was Mr. Adamski, which is ironic because in the years before that, there was the Adamski case. He was one of the first people to claim to have been taken on a spacecraft, the Adamski spacecraft, which is I have to admit, I'm a little skeptical about that. But who knows? It did get people thinking. And wondering at a time when it was quite important to try and develop those thoughts. But this, in the true story at Todmorden, Mr. Adamski is found. He's got acid burns or some strange burns on his head, and the body just turns up on the top of a coal heap where it would have been noticed.
So I seen this case. I actually seen something about it. Actually, it was on TV, and the night watchman checked the area, and there was nothing there. But when they come back in the morning, it was on top of the coal heap. But there was no way they could have got in. But it's like the guy on top of the mountain. How did that guy get up on top of that mountain with a full business suit on in the wintertime?
Absolutely right.
Yeah, there's a case over here. I believe it was about in the 70s and 80s. I was talking with an abduction hypnotist. I can't talk right now. My goodness. An abduction hypnotist. Basically, she does regression therapies. She was actually wanting to talk to me about situations I got going on, but she was telling me about this one case where I believe it was towards the East Coast, where 3 young boys all of a sudden disappeared from their backyard. Now, mom gets worried, starts looking around. People on the street get worried. A few hours later, the boys are found in the neighbor's pool. That's sealed shut. Gate locked up. That particular neighbor was out of town on vacation, had no idea what was going on. And they're like, how the heck did those kids get in there?
Because the pool had a cover, didn't it? The pool actually had a cover over it.
It It was completely covered, no signs of anything being messed with. It's just like they just popped right in the
Crazy,
pool.
isn't it? Have I told you about the? I mean, what I've tried to do is force back the story. Did I tell you about the Zeppelin scares of 1909? Have we ever talked about
I don't
that?
think you did.
I don't believe we have.
Well, in America, you will know that in the American West, there are stories of strange airships being seen in the 1890s.
Yes.
And that's certainly some of the earliest modern airships that I've ever heard of. To put this story into some perspective, in 1909, that was the first time anybody flew over the channel. His name was Louis Blériot. So that's the channel between France and Great Britain. In the months before that happened, I think it was March 1909, there was a PC Kettle, police constable Kettle, on patrol on his beat, a beat that he knew well, in Peterborough. Now, that's part of the eastern counties. Okay, Peterborough. It's a cathedral city. It's got lots of rows of terraced houses, you know, very typical. It's now a city. It was a big town in its day. A PC Kettle's on patrol. He hears a sound. He thinks it's a motor car. It's the early hours of a new day, really. Dawn's just about starting, so there's some light. He walks around the corner onto Cromwell Road. And he looks around and expecting to see a car, and there's nothing there. Now, remember, even in 1909, motor cars were still quite unusual. Not everybody had one. They were around, but he can't see it. So he thinks, well, if I can't see it, where's that sound coming from? And he looks up. And above him, he described it as if you put your hands like that and you stretch them up above you. It was that wide. So it's going to be 100-200 feet across, at least.
Right. Yeah.
So it's over 1,000 feet up in the air, this thing. And it's a long, dark, cylindrical object with a light on one end. And it's traveling at quite some speed across Peterborough, and it flies out of sight. This is a considerable, and he can hear there's some sort of sound of an engine, a whir of an engine. It's a big object, and it's gone at speed. Now, Zeppelins are not known for traveling at speed, and this thing zooms over. Now, he reports it to his sergeant. His sergeant said, "Oh, I didn't see it, lad. You know, what's going on?" And they wonder what is it? So it was put into the local press, and it's the kind of Peterborough Citizen, which is very much the local paper of the day. But other newspapers pick up on it, and it becomes quite a story all across Britain as newspapers quote the Peterborough Citizen. And it causes a bit of a scare because people don't know what it is. Now, what is intriguing is that when I was writing my book on the first Zeppelin air raids on Great Britain, and in fact, I charted every single Zeppelin air raid in the book for the anniversary back in 2015. I got in touch with Bundesarchiv in Germany. I got in touch with American Archives, Library of Congress as well. A friend of mine went through the public access military files as well, which, it was a good search through to try and find debriefs, memoirs, any accounts of German Zeppelin aircrew that flew over Great Britain before World War One. I could not find one single account. Not one. You'd think that they'd be proud. Oh, we went over there before. Not one. Not one. And I can assure you of that. That's in official records, memoirs, the whole lot. So what happened? Well, the Peterborough Citizen newspaper, in the following week, when it all really kicked off, issued a kind of a retraction. A spokesman has said, doesn't name the spokesman.
Yeah.
It's assumed to have come from the police. A spokesman has said that PC Kettle is mistaken. That what in fact he saw was a kite with a Chinese lantern attached to it, flying above the area where he believes he saw this airship. And the noise, the whirring sound, was actually the Cooperative Society bakery round the corner.
No.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
So
okay.
yeah, so this kind of dismissal, there's nothing new to it. Interestingly, in 1909, it's the same year that the Secret Intelligence Service had its kind of foundation in Great Britain, and that certainly smacks to me of a fledgling organisation that really didn't progress an awful lot further by the 1940s or 50s. And what is intriguing is that in May 1909, there were lots of sightings across East Anglia, but once we get to June and July, there were further afield sightings of these scare ships or mystery airships. One of the last is spotted over the Tyne in Northumberland, in the north of Britain, and it's seen at there's a place called Tyne Dock. This is at kind of the mouth of the Tyne Dock, and they looked across, and it's over this area called the Slade, which was due to be they were considering it as a naval base, and they were quite concerned that this object came over Tyne Dock. It then flew over this open area of the Slade in the dock, and a light was shone down. Now, the lighting capabilities of airships, they often spoke of them having searchlights, but they had illuminating flares that came on little parachutes. They didn't have heavy searchlights, and this thing seemed to switch on and switch off. And this themed the words that were used by those who witnessed it, which included a man who was a stevedore. He was a master stevedore with all of his men loading a cargo onto a ship at that time. He later became, he was a councillor. He later became the mayor of Tynemouth. So, he's a public official. He's a respected figure. And he said, yes, I saw it. He saw it. And the word he used, it darted around the sky and then went out to sea. In the rebuttal of that, in the following week, they didn't try and say it was a balloon or a kite. They said, "Oh, no. It's actually an airship. It's experimental, and it's in development on the Tyne." When you start digging into that, there was no manufacturer anywhere on the River Tyne making dirigibles, airships, or anything in experimental form or anything in 1909. But the story is issued, and that was it. It's dropped. Move on.
See, I find it very interesting because I can't remember if I've seen this, but it was in America, and I think it was in the 1890s, and there was sightings of what looked like a Zeppelin, but it wasn't a Zeppelin. It was more like a cigar-shaped UFO.
Yes.
Because I suppose, because obviously a cigar looks like a Zeppelin if you really think about it.
Yes.
And I honestly think they're extraterrestrial, and I think they were watching us then, and I think they've been watching us all this time. What's your thoughts, Dakota, on this?
They've been easily watching us.
Oh, yeah.
There's no doubt something's clearly been happening for a very long time. And I've said this example before. The damn wall is starting to burst when it comes to secrecy. And either it's come from laziness or it's just from too much is starting to pile out all at once. I fully believe within the next couple of years, we're going to be seeing something big.
It wouldn't surprise me at all. The early reason for these rebuttals, and you can see it because after the sightings of 1909, and there were subsequent sightings as well, right up until 1914, the year the First World War broke out, there were sightings before. After 1909, there was a move, actually under the leadership of Winston Churchill, and he, known for World War II and Britain's darkest hour, finest hour speeches, he brought about something called the Air Navigation Act. And what that did was it simply said, we've got an illegal aircraft flying over Great Britain, it infringes our laws, and if it's not got permission to be there, we can shoot it down. We didn't have the capability to shoot a lot down at that time.
No.
But it
We still don't.
it established that law. But amongst that, and that one of the reasons for why they wanted to deal with any threat from the air, and at this time, we shouldn't forget that H.G. Wells, the master, the modern master of science fiction, wrote a book called War in the Air. And there was even a very early black and white film. Some people argue it's one of the very first, and I don't disagree with them, one of the very first science fiction films of an aerial invasion force that looked very
That's
much like
fascinating. I'm going to
Technics.
look that up.
Yeah, if you
I'm
look
gonna
it
look
up,
that up,
the
watch
footage it's the old film is out there. It's a bit clunky, it's a silent,
Yeah,
but it's intriguing, and his book is far better than the film. And he was warning people of the dangers of, and in later years, of course, he wrote The Shape of Things to Come. H.G. Wells was a true seer of the future. But with all of this in mind, why the Air Navigation Act? Why these concerns? Why are they putting it down? It was, the argument always was panic. They've worried since then, if you've got in the late 18th, early 19th century, you've got revolution in France. You had a revolution in America, right up, think of 1812, the War of 1812 to the British. That is, there's revolutions going on, and it's around the world. We've got an empire, the Great British Empire, supposedly, to defend, and there are rebellions all the time. So that's a danger you've got to keep down. Britain had its own problems in the 1880s with unemployment and people taking to the streets. The red flag is flying. Karl Marx wrote some of his earliest works when he was in London.
Right.
His daughter Eleanor is one of the speakers at the Match Girl strike, the dock strikes. She's one of the, so there's real motivation there. So with that backdrop, if there's anything that could cause panic on the street, they want to squash it. And that's really where that all began. That they are the legacies of the 19th century that we're still suffering today. That the authorities, I'll use the term they, those in power, the authorities. I quite agree with them. Nobody wants panic on the street because it is a very dangerous thing. People can get hurt through nothing.
I good to remember in the 1900s and that, we had the Indian Empire, we had Australia, we had all these places, and look at Great Britain now. It's not really great anymore. It's it's just a wee island now. We used to have everything, but it's quite interesting you talk about the Zeppelins, because still to this day there's like Zeppelin like UFOs being seen.
Oh, there
and
are.
As you say, the big light coming down. I actually done a thing with the school years ago, obviously, because I'm quite old now, and it was about the Zeppelins, and it was about the German Zeppelins that they used, and they did have searchlights, but they were diabolical. They were like candle lit, gas lit light things, and they were rubbish, and they would fire flares out.
That's right.
And that wouldn't be bright enough. It wouldn't be bright enough.
Well, you can't easily switch them on and off. You can't shine a beam down. No. And if you think about instances like at Rendlesham, now that's 1980. There are beams coming down. Now, if you think about a controlled beam of light, that's quite something to achieve, isn't it? Even in the 1980s, in the 1980s, a maglite beam of light was something that would have been very, 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 very new. And if you want to try and get a maglite in a small object that's under some sort of intelligent control, this kind of powerful beam of light, it's technology that we can take for granted now that was pretty new back then.
The Rendlesham Forest incident always intrigued me. It's always intrigued me, but I find it very interesting why a lot of military bases around the world are getting targeted.
And it always has been.
Yeah,
back in World War II.
Yeah,
once you start to dig, you will find these stories. There's one in particular local to where I am at the moment in Northumberland. It's a place called Creswell Bay, which is near New Biggin. It's right up if you think of Great Britain, it's just down from Scotland on the coast. And there was a sentry on duty there. Now, Creswell Bay had a radar station. It was top secret. So if any enemy aircraft came near them, they weren't to fire at it because it would give away a position, and then the enemy aircraft could note that and come back, gun them, more bombers. So the idea of having sentries was really to patrol the perimeter in case there were intruders. That was the idea.
Yeah.
But this fella saw something in the sky between the clouds one night, dark night during World War II. He was a sentry on duty. What do you do? Well, I can't fire at it. And then suddenly the thing's bearing down on him at such a great speed. The man thinks, is it going to crash into me? What's going to happen to me? He was terrified. He found himself rooted to the spot. He dropped his rifle, which can be a chargeable offence. And before he knew it, he was no longer he collapsed to the ground, no longer on the ground. Where am I now? And he has a sensation of traveling, and he kind of opens his eyes and he's looking down through a glass panel, and he's traveling across the sea of Creswell Bay. There are entities near him. I can't say whether they were ETs or not. I don't know. He didn't know. Very, very honest account of it. He didn't know what on earth was going on. And then he's seen it as if it was a short while later that his consciousness came back as he felt that he was coming back to ground.
Yeah.
And he woke up a short distance from where he dropped his rifle and where he initially collapsed to the ground.
See, I find that very interesting what you said about the radar station, because it was actually Dr. Stephen Greer. Actually, he put out a public statement the other day. It was like 3 hours long, and he had a guest come on to actually talk about how they've been using radar. I think you know about this, Dakota. How they've been using radar to bring our little green friends down. That's how they've been bringing them down. They've been using the radar. There's something in radar that disrupts their flying, which is interesting.
Wow. Well, what is intriguing, I'll add a little spin on that one then. And I don't know the answer to this, but I will tell you that in my book, I'm trying to follow through accounts of what they used to call, and this is not my words, these are how it was described during World War II. It was described as a death ray. Now, this is no joke. If you dig, you will start to find it in the press. Now, number one, it could be that it was propaganda. And that propaganda from the Germans and the British enlarged on this idea that we've got a secret weapon. It's a death ray, and if you fly over, we can shine it up like a searchlight, and it will bring down your aircraft. But that said, there are numerous accounts from pilots, from navigators, from aircrew in British bombers over. This would be over France and occupied France and over Germany, who saw bombers just fall out of the air for no reason.
Yeah.
Now, and that's why they feared that a death ray had been somehow developed. Now we've got to remember as well, if a bomber gets shot up, it could be shrapnel in the engines. It could, but I think they had an idea of what an aircraft would look like if there was a shrapnel strike or if there was an anti-aircraft fire strike. They'd often turn into a ball of fire.
Yeah.
But for an aircraft to suddenly drop like a lead weight, that caused those seeing it to consider that looks different to what they were used to seeing in air. These are men that have, in some cases have many, many hours experience of aerial combat. These are not green flyers. They know what things look like up there. Their lives depend on what they see up there. And they were seeing aircraft on occasion just dropping it. But they did talk of gremlins. Have I told you about this before?
Oh, no.
Gremlins?
Please tell us about that.
I kid you not. You see, and this came from the British Royal Air Force. You all have heard of Foo Fighters.
Yeah.
These are the lights. Well, gremlins were kind of our equivalent of that these would be things that they believed jinxed British aircraft. Now, again, it could be that things had been, everything had to be mass produced and created very, very quickly in wartime, sometimes using suppliers that were not experienced manufacturers of aircraft parts.
Yes.
But then sometimes things would happen to control panels. We'd never had so many technological aircraft in the air at the same time. One thing that war does is bring on technology.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd never had anything quite like it. The speeds that are involved, enemy aircraft getting over here. But it also means that people on the ground, the Royal Observer Corps, are constantly, they've got their eyes peeled. Remember, this is the first time that we've ever seen rockets fired over Great Britain. Remember that. The V2 is a rocket. The V1 is a doodlebug. I mean, that's more or less it's a pilotless aircraft that's filled with fuel that will come and crash and blow up. But a V2 is a rocket. But this is before they were known. There's all sorts of stuff flying around. Anyway, if your aircraft goes wrong, you've done all of the checks that are necessary on it. They blame the gremlins. If you've got a strange light following you, it's a gremlin. If you've got something on your wing, and sometimes these guys, it could be the altitude. I mean, there are all sorts of arguments for and against, but were there little green men? It's crazy. What's happening? We don't know, but what we do know is there were more than one cartoonist that created these gremlins.
Yeah,
and drew them, and they've got little pointy ears, and they look like they're quite intriguing little creatures. But the one that should have been far more famous than it ever became, it was Roald Dahl. Now, if you heard of Roald Dahl, he's the man that wrote the BFG, the Big Friendly Giant, James, and the Giant Peach, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, all these incredible stories. Well, he was a fighter pilot. And he'd had an accident, been shot down, I believe. And while he was in hospital, a lot of these ideas, he scribbled them in his notepad. But he also wrote the story of the gremlins. And from people he'd talked to, and of course he's got his incredible imagination. So guess who got interested? Walt Disney. And he wanted to create a film all about the gremlins.
I didn't know that's fascinating.
Check it out. Look it up, and you will see them. Gremlins sat on the cloud on the pilot's wings. It was in magazines UK and US. You'll find them there. Now, of course, these have developed into little cartoon characters by this time. They're in a story, but I think Dahl didn't want it to kind of get the big Walt Disney treatment in the end. In the end, he felt this is a story from his comrades. It was different, so it didn't emerge as a Disney feature or little cartoon characters. And of course, many years later, completely different. Gremlins was it Spielberg did the film Gremlins that we'll remember when we were kids. But wind the clock back to World War II, and you'll see there's like an annual book, and it's simply called Gremlins.
That's fascinating.
Huh.
It's good, isn't it?
I did not know this.
You'd be and I can assure you, if listeners are looking now, just look online, Roald Dahl Gremlins, and you'll see it's a red cover. It's got a fighter aircraft on the front. You'll see them all there. So there's quite a history of unusual things being seen in the air, not just in America, not just around the world, but in Great Britain too.
I find it interesting. Dakota, because I can you've got to.
I'm just surprised with that, man. This is brand new information for me.
I mean, out there is there actually out there, Dakota? Is there actually wee green creatures that could represent the kind of gremlins? See, this is really interesting. This because it's when I go into the subject. I watch a lot of stuff to do with history and stuff like that, and it's like a thing I like today. And I was actually watching the World War II German Luftwaffe pilots that were getting interviewed, and this is going to they're dead now, I think. Well, they will be. And how they were talking about these sea strange lights, and the two Luftwaffe pilots chased after the lights. And they went over the English Channel and they had to turn around because obviously they kept going. They would have ended up in the UK.
Yes.
Mhm.
And I believe they also, the German pilots, believed that we had a death ray too.
Yes.
Because they saw aircraft fall out of the sky for no reason whatsoever.
I mean, if you could do the Nazi side of things, you could go down the Nazi bell because Hitler had like secret programs going on.
Oh, the Glocken. Yeah, there's.
Mhm.
But was it a Star Wars program, the like of which we saw only a few years ago? Is it a big bluff? Is it a Hitler fantasy, a Himmler involved fantasy? Or is there more to it? There are certainly sites around the place that, Lord knows.
The Nazis were definitely dabbling.
Were they to developing a nuclear reactor? The evidence appears to be there. I'm no great expert on that. I don't pretend to be.
Yeah.
But when you look around some of the occupied countries in Europe and what's going on there with some of the scientific people and the sheer size, if you watch shows like Abandoned Engineering, the scale of this is quite remarkable.
Oh yeah, I mean the Nazis, they say they were making like obviously that they had water and stuff like that, and they were. That's obviously the famous film where they blow up the boat carrying the water. Oh, what's the name of that film? That's got annoying me now. That's and they sink the ferry, and it's carrying the cargo. Obviously that stuff to make the nuclear stuff. But you got to remember too that Hitler was desperate again. He was getting beat. Yeah, I mean it was only a matter of time before his little empire came crashing down.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
The Japanese were holding on, just holding on. The only reason they survived really a wee bit longer is because they had an island. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Germany was landlocked. So,
but if you swing this round a little bit, kind of to where we started, you remember we talked about the Tic Tac and why I was so pleased that it's being recognised as a phenomenon. It's something that I've seen and pilots have seen recently, but it was being seen in World War II. And this is what really intrigues me, that I've found reports up here, north of Britain. We've got the Tyne. The River Tyne was a major shipbuilding area. The only bigger shipbuilding area in Great Britain was the Clyde in Scotland. I mean, this was huge.
I'm only 8 miles from there.
You've got it. So this is where they were building battleships. They are building merchant vessels. They are building small craft. They're doing, it's massive. So they've got to protect this area. So what they're doing is they've got a few air bases, but what they've got are these big barrage balloons. So they look, if you've ever seen a barrage balloon, it looks kind of like a really huge teardrop shape with ears on the back of it, like a stylized image of a bomb or a squashed up Zeppelin, but more squishy. They're not rigid. It's a gas bag. And the idea is it floats up. So if you fly into it, you will blow up.
Yeah.
If you try and shoot it, it will blow up and it might well take you with it if you're that close to it. And also it's suspended or held onto in the air, not by string, not by rope, but by a wire rope. Now, this is if you think how a rope is made, it's made from multiple strands.
Yeah.
Well, these are wire ropes that are made from multiple strands of metal. And they are tested they're about, a good thickness like that. So if they are up there, these are strong. If an aircraft flies into it, it'll take your wing off. Down you go. It might.
I've heard stories for London during the Blitz and stuff like that. The German bombers came too close and it actually went right through the wing. It just ripped the bit of the wing off and they went spinning out of control and crashed. Right. Yeah, that's what they would say. The cheese cutters, basically that's what they were called. Yeah.
Here on the Tyne, it's unusual because around this area, the barrage, they wanted a lot of the male air crew to be at the kind of sharp end of things. So they put women onto the barrage. I mean, that's pretty tough if you've got bombs and stuff and aircraft going on. But they put members of the Women's Auxiliary Air Force. They were part of what they call Balloon Command. Now, Balloon Command is part of the anti-aircraft scheme, and they will be the operators of the barrage balloons. So they've got a lorry there with a winding device at the back. So the enemy aircraft are coming. Okay, sirens going off. They get a klaxon, they run, and off they go. And so the barrage balloons lift up, and they're let up by these wire ropes. There are accounts of an object. It's white. It seems to glow. They described it the size of an Austin 10. It's just, what would I compare that? Bigger than a Mini. If you have minis around the world, it's a bit bigger than a Mini. And the thing was seen. They worried because they thought it's an aircraft coming down. You've got anti-aircraft fire going on. There's aircraft dropping bombs. You've got to be really careful. Lots of danger going on. Lots in the air, and these things are diving through. You think they're coming towards you, and you think it's going to get caught on the wire, and it doesn't. The thing goes straight through the wire, and the wire comes clattering down. There's still one wire or several wires attached to the barrage balloon, but the barrage balloon then kind of goes, and it's just on one wire, and you've got to get it down. What was it? They don't know. They examined the wire, and it's melted through, like a blowtorch has touched it, but it's gone through like that.
That's very interesting.
It was fully reported. Photographs were sent. Men from the ministry came out, and not just the air ministry, but the tech support guys came out, and they couldn't answer it. They just thought, but the answer the girls were given was that, well, these are just girls, they're mistaken, it must be anti-aircraft fire, because on the coast, now the coast is pointing out to sea. They're not firing into the Tyne area, but they were blaming these what were known as unrotated projectile rockets. We had an anti-aircraft rocket, but they've pointed out to sea, and they're not pointed over the Tyne. Because if they come down, they can destroy factories or people's homes. So the inference, well, it's top secret. We can't tell you. We suspect it's a stray rocket.
I mean, for something to do that to that kind of steel rope, I mean, that's even if let's just take a Messerschmitt, right? Like a Messerschmitt flies into that day and as fast as speed, it wouldn't melt it. The plane would probably just explode.
Yeah, it would chew it. It would just explode. It would fray it. It would chew it.
Yeah.
Or even if it incredibly, it would cut it through, and it would it would fray and splay. To see a rope that's just like someone's got a blowtorch, but at quite some speed gone through it. So it's sealed. It's melted. Incredible.
It's definitely intriguing. It makes you wonder why whoever's piloting these things, right? What's your opinion, Neil? Right? Well, obviously, with all the stuff that's getting released now, who do you think they are? Do you think they're maybe? Why do you think they're watching this for some reason?
Well, why does anybody watch? I mean, we're aware now, and I think, or the public at least are aware, that there are Chinese drones or Oriental drones of different sort that have been found over America. And I'm fairly sure that similar things that have been at an altitude that is a bit too high for satellites, or a bit too low for satellites, a bit too high for fighters, it's disposable. It's under no control. So how are you going to detect it? People have always wanted to know, what are the neighbors up to? And anybody that's got a fence, if you've got a fence, a wooden picket fence, you're going to tell me you've never looked at what your neighbors are up to? You hear a funny noise next door. You hear the dog barking. You never looked. Yeah? Well, I don't believe you.
My neighbors, I had to wonder why is the kid screaming like that. But
you know what I'm saying, though? You have a look. And it might be that you care about your neighbor. We care about our neighbors, hopefully, and get on. But countries, by the nature of security, are quite rightly in some ways paranoid. You've got to be paranoid. How will you detect any type of threat that might be coming your way? You go and have a little looky, you know, and you can do that with holiday makers taking snaps. They were doing that in the 1930s, German holiday makers. You know, Mr. Hitler and his military geographic unit in Berlin. Oh, do send us your holiday snaps. You've got factories, you know, you've got industrial places, nice roadworks, you know, waterworks, utilities. Send them in, you know. So by that alone, if we are not alone in this universe, and I to be honest with you, I think we would be rather arrogant to think that we are completely alone, and we could be the only race of people that are intelligent enough to make an aircraft or spacecraft. So they, at the most basic level, they're coming to have a look, and maybe they are actually quite sensitive enough to come and have a look and think we're going to freak those people out. If we let them know that we're firmly here, we're definitely, you know, maybe they've even communicated with some of the intelligence forces or ordinary people that have been picked up by the so-called men in black. Who knows? But you know, and people are scared because they've been taught to be scared. If you think about it, until the 1970s, the majority of the books, the magazines, anything that you saw, if you saw UFO, it's described as the UFO menace. You know, it's the man that came down with the silver spacecraft. He's a giant. He's got one eye, and if you get in his way, he's going to turn you to dust with a ray gun. You know, only Close Encounters mellowed it, followed up closely by E.T., where we actually learned to love what was quite a scary looking alien from a child's point of view.
See, I think that's the government's worst nightmare, is the public making a new friend out there, making a new, there's like, we've got a neighbour nearby world, we've got a neighbour, they're coming to look at us, and maybe they were thinking, my God, what are they doing to themselves again? They're bombing each other here in World War II, they're bombing each other, and the same in World War I. And because there's Rangersland Forest with the military base and stuff like that, maybe they're curious, they're like, they've developed nuclear weapons. That can't be allowed, because they're either going to kill themselves or eventually they're going to start traveling. Let's face it, humans are going to eventually start traveling. And maybe they're sitting thinking to themselves, they eventually, it might not be this 100 years, it might not be the next 100 years, but they are going to start traveling. And then we're going to get a visitor. And maybe they're getting worried.
It's always the fear. It's an old saying. It's the fear of the unknown. Arthur C. Clarke, God bless him. You know, the man that had the vision for 2001, A Space Odyssey, the novel. You know, the man that created the communicator. He really had the vision for the communication satellite. The man that inspired many of us with that incredible series, Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World, when we were kids. And he said that, you know, if you see technology beyond your comprehension, it's magic or witchcraft. And for us, that we might still be that primitive people that we are.
We're still primitive.
Frightened of it because we don't understand it. Maybe we have every reason to be frightened of it. We, at this moment in time, this is all conjecture. We don't know. And I think people deserve to know if there is more knowledge. I think it's being drip fed to us with some of the releases that have happened. Because years ago, that stuff from the Pentagon, that would have been squashed.
Oh yeah, good God,
You know, I think nowadays, now that everybody they've got that ability to have a live feed, which is something we haven't had that capability in, what is it, 20 years? Really? 20 years that we've had to the degree it's become a saturation point that everybody's got it. And they are starting to record things. Maybe people are at a stage where more things can be admitted. I think we just have to be very careful of charlatans. Let's put it like that. Deception. Deception both from official lines because they want to calm it down, but also deception from those that claim they don't want to make any money out of it, but actually they just want to get the hits on the Facebook. But also, we shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. But that's why you see that intelligence is a funny old game, that often that works in their favor. If you've got all these people coming out with the loony ideas, we can sneak a few things under the carpet. Oh, yeah, you just keep talking about that. And we'll keep sliding it under the carpet.
I mean, I find it intriguing because you think about it, it's not been that many years ago where we're still using horse and carts to get about.
Well, it's true. Yeah. It's true now.
And we're using coal to run trains and stuff like that. I mean, it's what, 8 years? Round about that.
You can now get a man on a jetpack that can go up a mountainside to rescue you if you've had an accident.
I know.
Do you know?
Can you imagine what that's going to be in 100 years from now if we've not blew ourselves up?
Incredible. Incredible. Yeah. So I think my money is certainly on. If I was going to be honest, I think we have had some contact. From another world. I don't think it's crazy to say. I think there has been contact in one form or another in all these years. And what form it's taken, I don't know. But some things come down somewhere. Whether it's Roswell, I mean, Dorothy Kilgallen, the American reporter, during a visit to Great Britain, was told that we'd got something in World War II.
Yeah,
that was an alien spacecraft of sort that's being looked at.
I think there was even an alien spaceship crashed in the 1800s in the United States. I can't exactly remember where it was. Where was it?
I just saw something about this.
What you're thinking of is the incident with the little green man.
Is that the one with
ET? I think we call him an ET because I know that's the kind of word that we can use. An extraterrestrial figure was found that was killed in the accident, and he was buried in the local cemetery.
Down in Texas.
And they dumped the UFO, and they dumped the UFO meant to be down the well or something like that. And they filled in the well.
Yeah.
And they had. There was one
well
point
was
history.
Empty, or junked or filled in or something. There might still be some residual bits down there, but they will not allow the ET to be exhumed.
Interesting that.
Why?
There was at one point they had a tombstone for it, but now that's hard to find.
And they moved it so people couldn't find his grave.
Because somebody's going to be crazy enough to go try digging it up. That's all they need. The reason they need.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine if you dig that up? Don't do it, guys. Don't. Take that with a warning if anybody watches that. But don't go digging up a graveyard. But can you imagine if you dug that up and it was an extraterrestrial?
Well, if it was dealt with properly, with the proper authorities and respectfully, because clearly the death of that if it was an extraterrestrial, it's from a foreign, from another dimension, another planet. It hasn't brought the rain of fire down upon us. So
if we start parading it on sticks,
be respectful. Be respectful.
I'm just saying, man, people are crazy.
Don't go crazy. Be respectful. Was it an alien or was it a military experiment of some sort? Who knows? Who knows?
I find it intriguing because
let the little guy rest in peace, or girl. I don't know whether there was ever agenda for the alien, the ET.
See, that's the thing now, though, because you talk about that whistleblower with the Pentagon. He actually says that Roswell happened, and we go, and there was other crashes where we've got the technology, and it makes you wonder because your technology has just jumped so quickly after World War II. I mean, you obviously had the Enigma machine, which that was the first really computer and stuff like that. But 1950, I would say, the technology's just jumped extraordinary.
It's been mooted, and I'm no technical expert, but fiber broadband seems to not have a clear inventor.
Yeah.
Who knows? Do you know, I look at it this way. I love history. I love stories. I love legends.
Yes.
And maybe these are our legends for the future. You know, and we'll have some fun debunking them as we've been chasing dragons and ghosts and strange for all these years. And as long as people don't get hurt and there isn't disrespect and desecration, then clearly there's not the rays coming down and the 50-foot spaceman with the Cyclops eye giving it a bit of that. Go easy.
Well,
I think government should be more respectful of people.
Yeah.
And you know, tell the truth. Don't keep drip feeding it. Just
it'll come out eventually.
I think so. I think we just have to let them know that we know, or at least we're ready. Our minds are open. We're not going to flip. That's what we don't want. We're flip. We're ready. We're mature enough as a civilization to say, okay. I've got an old-fashioned view of the world. You know, who knows it? If we're shown not to be the only creatures on this universe, well, maybe that might just calm down some people that really do need to calm down in this world.
It may,
right?
Wouldn't that be? It's called perspective, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, it is. Yeah. And if you.
We've got a lot of troubles in this world. We have got a lot of troubles in this world. And I think if we don't do something soon about it, I think it's got to get worse. We really need to stop fighting each other.
Strive for peace, my friends. That's it sounds an old-fashioned concept, but believe me, a few moons ago, we saw a really different world when the Berlin Wall came down. We saw a real peace in for a little while. There's always trouble around the world somewhere, but there was a real hope for peace, and I just hope, and you got to hope. You got to hope. I knew a few World War I. I knew a lot of World War II veterans, and it would break their hearts to see young men and women coming back from war with their bodies and minds shattered by conflict. So the one message I would leave everybody, because I must hit the road very soon, or hit the sack, is strive for peace.
Exactly. Could you say it any better?
Is that the most scary thing that's been said? The most bonkers thing on Bald and Bonkers? Strive for peace. Yes. Do you know, it's possible. It happens. You don't shoot at each other. You don't threaten each other. Guess what? It's called peace. And ultimately, that should be just about what everybody really wants. Just get on with your life. Peace. Is it really that difficult?
One day, hopefully, Neil, it'll happen.
The good old naive English historian, but it is a dream, and it's a dream that we should strive for.
Yeah. I would like to say thank you very much for coming on the show, Neil, and telling us about your new UFO book that's coming out next year, and I can't wait. I wish I did have a time machine.
It's always a pleasure, gentlemen. It really is, and thank you to all the ladies and gentlemen for listening in tonight and watching the show and supporting us, and just thank you all for such a warm welcome. Thank you.
Well, of course.
Cool.
And I hope to see you again soon. And I'll say from me to you, good night, and may your gods go with you.
I think there's no better way to end it.
Exactly. Catch you later, dudes. Have a great week.
Bye. Good night.